Further debate? I recognize the member from Cambridge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to be participating in this debate this evening on Bill 27 put through by the Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, I don't know where to begin, so let's start at the beginning. The committee put together to make recommendations for this bill was a committee of 6. 2 lawyers, 3 university lecturers or professors, and an executive from a big bank. They were supposed to come up with recommendations to lead the future of work in Ontario and some kind of recovery after 3 years of this government putting people out of work and bankrupting businesses. Now, all the committee members are accomplished individuals, good for them, but in the committee that referred these changes, no representation from small businesses, no representation from medium-sized businesses, no startups, no entrepreneurs, no representation from the industries and the players that are the backbone of our economy. The committee needed representation from people who know what it is like to hire and fire, who have employees, who know the challenges of the job market. Lawyers, professors, executives at big banks, and politicians are not the backbone of our economy. Yet that is who provided the recommendations to the minister on how to revamp our labour laws. And so, as one would expect, what we see here in this bill is more red tape, more big government, more premier dad-like solutions to micromanage our employees and job creators and to bring further barriers into Ontario's economy. What a shame, Mr. Speaker, to think 2.3 million people voted in 2018 for a change in government and a change in direction, and instead they got a government that is determined to move along on the same trajectory as the last Liberal government. No change at all. This bill clearly shows this PC government isn't blue, and they are certainly not for the people of Ontario, Mr. Speaker. Not blue and not for you. That should be the motto of this government. As is evident with this government, like the Liberal governments of 15 years before, it's the same, basically. They don't like diversity. They don't like different choices made by different people and different businesses. They want a one-size-fits-all, my way or the highway approach, and this is what we have here. Number 1, helping immigrants get licensed by removing barriers in some professions, removing the requirement for Canadian work experience. When we have so many Ontarians out of work because of this government's policies, mandates, and don't forget the 3 economy-killing lockdowns, when we have Ontarians being threatened with job loss without any ability to collect employment insurance, which they've paid into for many years, due to them exercising their right to not disclose their vaccine status or the right to choose to not get vaccinated. So Ontarians are losing their jobs, and the Minister of Labour has said on multiple occasions that we have a labour shortage of 293,000 jobs. And this PC government is encouraging these employers, to put through COVID-19 vaccine mandates and at the same time removing requirements of Canadian work experience for access to some professions. Why not leave it up to the professional bodies to set these requirements of entry into their professions? A good idea would have been to legislate measures to ensure these professional licensing colleges do not have the ability to clamp down on free speech on their professionals and do not have the ability to mandate speech and certain conduct or certain political philosophies and thus kicking their members out for not obliging with groupthink. But instead, this government shows it isn't interested in protecting free speech or diversity of thought. This government wants to let the professional bodies do a one-size-fits-all model, but at the same time make it easier for individuals to qualify to practice in those professions. If the government was worried about the labour shortage, it wouldn't allow employers to be firing their employees on medical choices. Instead, they create the labour shortage and fix it like this, by punishing Ontarians. Number 2, mandating that companies disclose their policies as to when employees can disconnect from work. Talk about the very definition of red tape, the very definition of micromanaging a business or a big government, really. I guess we shouldn't be surprised. This is the same government, after all, that decided to make laws to tell people how many people can come over for Thanksgiving, to tell businesses how many people they can seat and what hours they can open, and that bankrupted businesses and that closed down businesses and open them and close them and open them and close them. They want to run every single business in Ontario when they can't even properly run the government. The new policy will be forced on businesses and does not take into account the different workplace scenarios where this doesn't even make sense. Here we have the government that claimed to be for the little guy and to cut red tape is now implementing more red tape and additional paperwork for small business owners. These additional restrictions that the PC government will be imposing on corporations will be passed down to the workers. Speaker, allow me to read a quote from Matthew Lau, who wrote an article titled, "What Works for Workers is Letting Them Choose" in the Financial Post. Quote, "The government does not help workers by mandating that their compensation mix include a disconnection policy. The revealed preference of many workers is that they would find this counterproductive, as evidenced by the fact that they currently choose to work for companies that don't have these policies." End quote. Some companies cannot allow for disconnection. Their employees are on call for emergencies. This bill led to employees losing their hours, an opportunity to abide by this policy, making it more expensive for a business to operate. These extra costs and burdens are passed on to the consumer at the indirect cost to the employee. Every situation is different, and in the case of companies where the worker finds less value in the policy than the cost for the company to implement the policy, it is a loss for the worker. The cost is passed down, or the company's labour costs increase at the expense of higher salaries in order to keep the same level of employment and productivity. If there was a labour shortage and workers demanded this policy, it would be reflected in the market, with employers providing this type of policy gaining a competitive advantage over companies that do not. If workers choose to work for companies without these policies, there's obviously a reason: higher pay, perhaps work environment, culture, work from home. This bill kills these choices and stamps out innovation. Number 3, banning non-compete agreements, again putting more restrictions around companies and limitations around workers, using a one-size-fits-all mentality, similar to the last top-down big government solution, micromanaging how businesses operate. Banning non-competes is a terrible idea. Workers find compensation in signing non-competes. They get extra value, including increased severance when entering into these agreements. It is not pro-worker to strip these options from workers. Furthermore, some companies need these agreements to survive, to protect their property, to protect and encourage innovation. This bill would put a chill on new hires related to new inventions. Without a non-compete, an employer would wait to hire someone for fear of giving away the ideas and watching the employee leave to compete. This then hurts the consumer, who is denied the benefit of the invention hitting the market sooner. 4, forcing companies to open their washrooms to delivery drivers who stop there. Ontarians will be happy to know that while the government will ensure delivery drivers can use washrooms of businesses because it must have been a problem before, this is the same government that won't allow parents to accompany their own children to the bathroom or help them get ready for sports or watch them play unless they have a COVID-19 vaccine passport, apparently. This government fails to recognize diversity and differences between people and businesses, and fails to respect people's freedom to choose, and fails to recognize the importance of a free market. Unbelievable, really, from a formerly right-of-centre party. And the most obvious argument for why this bill is total nonsense, especially coming from this government, is that within their own political party or within their own ministries and government operations, do you think the Premier or his Cabinet Minister have on their own implemented policies on disconnecting and not being available after 5? Absolutely not, quite the opposite. So a little competition in the private sector is okay. Non-competes are bad in the private sector, but for this government and their political party, restrictive covenants and working after 5 is expected. Speaker, I say I only have 4 seconds left. I will not be supporting this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time.